Hello, and welcome to Cloaker's Education Foundation, where we provide quality content for amazing teachers and students. If you're joining us from a previous series or previous video, welcome back. And if this is your first time, we're glad you're here. This is our World History series, and this lesson is on Ancient Egypt, the Old Kingdom. Now let's dive in. The objective of this lesson is that students will be able to evaluate the impact of geography on Egyptian civilization and explain how government, religion, and social structure shaped the culture during the Old Kingdom. This means we have two essential questions. How did Egypt's geography, especially the Nile River, help shape its early civilization and protect it from invasion? And how did religion and government work together to create Egypt's social structure during the Old Kingdom? So we're going to break this lesson down into three parts: the geography of Egypt, the Old Kingdom, and then the culture that is developed within the Old Kingdom. But let's set the stage. Mesopotamia is home to the oldest and first civilizations. Egypt will be home to one of the first empires, having major political unity, major stability, and cultural continuity into the modern era. Now, Egypt is located in Africa. Many people associate it with the Middle East or Southwest Asia because geographically it is next to it, but I assure you Egypt is located on the continent of Africa. You can see on the map on the left-hand side of your screen some of the outlines of key features along the Nile River, from the Valley of Kings all the way up to the pyramids of Giza. Now it's important to note this Nile River, Upper Egypt is going to be towards the south, and Lower Egypt will be considered more towards the north or towards the Nile Delta. When it comes to the geography of Egypt, the Nile is the most important resource for ancient Egypt. It's used for transportation, it's used for irrigation and agriculture, and it's used for defense. The Nile, coming in at over 4,100 miles long, is the longest river in the world. And what's amazing about the Nile is that it floods every year like clockwork, depositing rich soil, rich silt onto the ground as the water recedes, thus making fertile farmland next to the river. Because of its importance, the Egyptians are going to worship the Nile as a god. Now, the Nile floods every year, like I just stated, unlike the major rivers in Mesopotamia, in the Indus River Valley, and in the Huanghe River Valley. Another unique fact about the Nile is that the Nile flows north, unlike most rivers in the world. Because the mountains are located in the south, it flows downstream and empties out into the Mediterranean, and the Nile Valley is surrounded by deserts on both sides of it. Now, with all of its greatness, it does have some major flaws and major disadvantages. If the Nile does not flood as much and is just a few feet short than normal, thousands of people will starve from the lack of farmland. If it floods a few feet more than normal, homes and property are going to be destroyed from the raging water. And the desert on each side of the river forces the Egyptians to live on a small strip of land near the river, but that desert will also act as a natural barrier against many invaders. Egypt is going to develop not just into three historical categories of the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom. It'll develop geographically as two separate entities, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Now, to the southern border of Upper Egypt will be the region of Nubia, And this is going to be rich in gold and provide a lot of resources to the pharaohs once they're in charge. Now, when you see this map on the right, you have Nubia, where modern-day Sudan would be. You have Upper Egypt, or the highlands, where you have higher elevation, and then Lower Egypt as you get closer to the Nile Delta and closer to sea level. Now, a king named Narmer is going to unify Egypt around the year 3000 BC. And we know this because of a stone or a tablet that is now called the Narmer palette. And with the hieroglyphics and the known translation, it tells of how he unified Egypt, both Upper and Lower Egypt. Now, Narmer was from Upper Egypt. Historically wore the white crown. It was a sign of unity. And on the back side of the tablet, it shows him with rows of decapitated enemies, depicting him as part bull, trampling, showing royal power and royal authority, and then taking the red crown of Lower Egypt. Now, Narmer is occasionally and sometimes referred to as the Scorpion King, but he is known as the first true pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Now, they did make 2 or 3 movies called The Scorpion King, featuring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. No, they are not historically accurate. End of story. Narmer is the first pharaoh. He is the first Egyptian dynasty, and we'll see over 31 dynasties spanning over 2,000 years develop after Narmer and his legacy. And so just to reiterate, you have Nubia in the south, you have Upper Egypt, Middle Egypt, and then Lower Egypt as you get closer to sea level. The Nile flows north, and the elevation increases as you go south. Now we enter the first period known as the Old Kingdom, around 2600 BC, lasting for about 500 years. Many patterns are going to be established within the Egyptian culture and civilization. It is the age of pyramids. Most of the pyramids are going to be built during this time, and it is a massive stone structure that serves as a tomb for the pharaoh. The Old Kingdom is the kingdom of pyramids, and you can see the innovation that happens with pyramids. For example, one of the oldest built by Djoser, the Step Pyramid, where it goes up in increments. We see that engineering and innovation improves when Sneferu built the Bent Pyramid, which is starting to transition to what we would call a classical pyramid, and then perfecting it with the red pyramid, the smooth-sided pyramid. And eventually, the power is going to decline, and the age of pyramids will be mostly over. And as the Old Kingdom comes to an end, we have the pharaoh Khufu. Now that is his Greek name. His actual Egyptian name would have been closer to Khnum Khufu, meaning the god Khnum protects us. And he is going to be the one who builds the great pyramids of Giza, which are iconic symbols of the ancient world. So let's transition to one of our later goals and talk about the Egyptian culture that develops within the Old Kingdom. Now, the pharaohs that rule Egypt are going to rule with absolute power. They are the center of Egyptian culture. They are the center of Egyptian government and the center of the Egyptian religion. Remember, they are viewed as god kings. And because they are viewed as part god, they rule not just with political authority, but with religious authority, making ancient Egypt known as a theocracy. The pharaoh was not the only god within the Egyptian religion. They were polytheistic, or they had the belief in many gods, such as the god Re, Osiris, and Isis. All of them are gods within ancient Egypt. They do believe in an afterlife, and they built burial chambers and tombs for those that passed away, especially those of power, such as the pharaohs. And there was a whole process known as mummification, where they embalmed, dried out the corpses, took out the organs, and placed them in jars, and this would prevent decay. Now, they also slaughtered servants and the pharaoh's dogs so that they would be able to go with him or her into the afterlife and continue to serve them. The process of mummification is quite long. You have to dry the body out. You have to remove the organs, preserve it, and wrap it so that it does not decay, all before you can encase it in its final tomb. Now you see on the bottom left-hand side, that is the mummified body of King Tut. And on the right of that photo is a 3D image of what archaeologists think King Tut looked like based off of the muscle tissue and bone structure in his face. And then on the far right, you see that was the actual case that his body was enshrined in. The pharaoh is not only the spiritual head of the religion, he is also the political head. And so we see the Egyptian society and political system structured and built around him and her, the pharaoh. Now, you have the pharaoh, you have their most trusted advisor, the vizier. You have the other government officials, priests, nobles. Then you have the soldiers and the scribes. Now, again, reading was quite a treasured feat. The ability to write was quite a treasured feat. It elevated your social status. Then below them you had merchants and craftsmen, and then at the very bottom, farmers and slaves. When we look at Egyptian society, we see that women are afforded some unique roles and rights within ancient Egypt. Women had many of the same rights as men. Women could propose marriage, and most women in ancient Egypt were married between the ages of 14 and 16. And if there was a divorce or a separation, the wife was entitled to 1/3 of the couple's property. The Egyptian writing system is known as hieroglyphics. These are carvings of symbols and pictographs. These symbols are going to represent ideas, not necessarily words. And the Egyptians are going to write not just on pottery and stones, but also on papyrus reeds. Now, this is like an early version of paper. However, papyrus dries out and cracks very often, and so they are not long-term keeping records on papyrus reeds unless someone is actively copying them every few months onto new papyrus reeds. The Egyptians will create a calendar that is 365 days and have 12 months with 30 days in it. This is unique because not every society during this time has a calendar. Not every society has a calendar that has 10 months or 12 months or even 30 days. Some of them have more and some of them have far less. The Egyptian doctors had quite advanced medicines. They knew how to check a human's pulse and the relation to one's health. They knew how to set broken bones and even perform surgeries in some cases. All of these are unique achievements of ancient Egypt and the Old Kingdom. And so we see that Egyptians achieved something no one had ever done before. They built one of the first truly unique and united empires on the planet, unifying Nubia, Upper Egypt, and Lower Egypt. So let's take a few moments, and if you haven't answered your essential questions, take a few moments and answer that now. How did Egypt's geography, especially the Nile, shape its early civilization and protect it from invasion? And how did religion and government work together to create Egypt's social structure during the Old Kingdom? That wraps up our lesson. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, especially if you found this helpful. Check us out on Teachers Pay Teachers, YouTube, Rumble, and the Cloaker Education Foundation website. We have a ton of resources out there and a ton of free videos for you as well. Or you can skip to our next lesson. If you thought your life was messy, we're going to argue with Zeus about petty things. We're going to see ancient cancel culture. We'll see athletes risking it all for bragging rights, and there's not even a medal at the Olympics. Yes, ancient Greece, where myth meets democracy, and all of their drama impacts all of us now, 1,000 years later. All of that and more right there on your screen. It's just a click away. I'll see you there.